We talking about practice. Not a game, not a game. We talking about practice.
Welcome, everyone, to another After Practice podcast with myself, Lake Lewis. This is your home for Washington Commanders Now football. We'll talk about all those things. Today's show is powered by sportsjourney.com and is also where we're sitting right now in studio at literally the ABC Channel 4 TV studio. So we'll be here all the time now doing this podcast, bringing you a different look, kind of TV, kind of radio, the whole whole mixture. My technical director, wasn't sure what he wanted to call it, but this is what we're doing, folks. So as always, have to plug our sponsors. We have some great sponsors for today's show. We have, Team Evolution Basketball Training. I coached with them for a while. Great guys over there, Alex, Brian, and the crew. Check them out if you're trying to have your kids' game elevate to the next level. I'm telling you, that's the place to do it. Back in Loudoun County and Fairfax County, and I think now they've moved to Montgomery County as well. So pretty much covering all of the DMV. And then, of course, Chill Skins. Chill Skins, some good friends of mine over there. Great product. If you're a workout warrior, if you're a person that gets out and you're an adventurous, these towels are great to keep you cooled off. And as the weather gets warmer, those are the things that you're going to need. And then, as always, folks, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Twitter at Lake Lewis Jr. And also on Instagram and Facebook at Lake Lewis Jr. as well. And then, of course, you can follow Sports Journey at sportsjourney.com, sportsjourney.com on social media, and you can subscribe to this podcast. You can watch it, what you're doing right now. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can subscribe to it on pretty much every major podcast carrier, Apple, Spotify, Castbox, you name it, it's on there. So this is what we do, folks. So let's get right into it. What are we talking about today? We're talking about these uniforms that the Washington Commanders, the new name for the team, they've unveiled. What's your thoughts on them, folks? I mean, be honest with me. Let me know your thoughts. You can tweet me during the program. You can tweet me. Let me know your thoughts. I'll read your tweet on air. We'll do that a little bit later today. But the uniforms, I've been saying for years before this team changed their name, I've been saying that they needed to come up with a new uniform. They needed something different. Well, we got 3 new uniforms. We have 3 distinct colors as well. And I'm not going to come out and say that they're great uniforms. They are better than what they had previously. But I'm still, I'm right there right now. I'm still on the fence about how I feel about them. And the reason why I say that is we'll break down all 3. You go to the burgundy uniform. Yeah, that's more of the traditional look for this team. That's the look that we've seen over the years. I'm okay with it. But it just doesn't have, it doesn't have character, in other words. It doesn't have like a distinct look. If I say names like Pittsburgh Steelers, San Francisco 49ers, Dallas Cowboys, which a lot of people don't like hearing back home, but when you say those names, you know exactly what their uniform looks like. You know exactly what it's going to be, even if they stray away from it and give you something, different one particular season, you still know what their meat and potatoes uniform is. I just don't see that, with Washington's new uniforms. I just don't see it. They're all catchy. They're all, kind of in vogue for the moment. But I think that there's things that are probably going to change over the years because there's no signature defined look right now. That burgundy uniform, it's clean. It's the right colors, if that's what you want to go by. But I'm not sure if that's going to be a permanent look for them. Then if you go to the white uniform, the more and more I see like artist renditions on players of the white uniform, it's growing on me. It doesn't look bad. The problem, however, is still the color scheme. That's more of a crimson. That's not a burgundy. And it's a crimson and black based uniform, even though it's on all white. There's really no hints of gold in there except for the Nike swoosh sign that's on the side of the jersey. So they need to put some kind of elements of gold back in that uniform to really bring it back to a Washington feel. And until they do that, it's going to get mixed reviews. And then naturally there's the black uniform. The black uniform is the one that I think everyone likes. I remember my brother-in-law called me. He's super excited about that. He's been saying for the longest time, why can't you say something to someone in the building, like if I have that kind of pull. But anyway, he's like, say something. We need to get a black uniform. Well, now we have one. And I must say, it's catchy. Again, not bad. Better than what they had before. but it still doesn't have, to me, character. It lacks a little bit of definition to it. And I thought that that was going to be the natural uniform that Washington used to honor the military. Naturally, they've been telling us for 2 years, that they wanted to have the name and the team now, pay homage to the military, and rightfully so. And with all due respect, that's a great gesture. But you didn't do it, if you ask me, because I don't see any of that in the uniform. I think on the sleeves, as you can see there looks like there's some kind of grayish, some people are saying it's a camouflage. To me, that just looks like mesh. It looks like the mesh and the material of the jersey. So how do I feel about the uniforms? From a 1 to 10, 10 being outstanding, 1 being poor, I'm going to say a 6, maybe 7. I think if you can start to mix the uniforms up, perhaps you put the burgundy pants on the white uniform, and then maybe it'll give you a little bit of hint of the old school look for the Washington Commanders, Washington Redskins at that point. So now, best thing about the uniforms has got to be the helmet. The helmet is pure fire. I love the helmet. I like the matte look on there. It's kind of a matte chrome look a little bit. I love the helmet. I think that's the best thing they have going for them right now. And I don't mean that black helmet. Black helmet, not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure how I feel about having that W right in the middle of the head. Not sure about that. But I do think that the burgundy helmet is a winner. 1 to 10 for that. I got them at a 9 for that helmet. Love it. Think I probably would have liked it a little better if they had made the face mask gray, just to give it a different hint. But that's just me. I can't complain for everything. But yeah, overall, uniforms aren't bad. You have the crest. The crest of, is going to be the look now that you're going to see on a lot of the merchandise. I think you're going to see this crest more so than you're probably going to see the W that we'll talk about shortly. But that crest, even though it looks a little boring at times, it did go without a moment of the fans being disgruntled. Let's just put it that way. Some fans brought to light that on the crest, the numbers, the years on there are the years that some of their best teams, their greatest teams, actually won the Super Bowl. But it doesn't reflect the year of the team that had, what they did during that regular season. So for instance, to make this, put this in layman's terms, the 1991 team, which went 14-2, and I'll say this and I'm going to say it to the day I leave this earth, that team technically should have been 15-1 because the final game of the season against the Philadelphia Eagles at the Vet, in Philadelphia, they didn't play any of their starters. They almost didn't even play, the majority of their backups in that game, and they still just lost the game 17-14, I think, on a final game-winning field goal by the Eagles. So, yeah, if they had played their starters, they would have trounced the Eagles. They would have been 15-1 going into the postseason. But that's not what happened. So, anyway, that team was 14-2 that year. And did I say, by the way, if you go back to the losses that year, the one only real true loss was against the Dallas Cowboys, their arch rival. And the Cowboys, this was Troy Aikman, Michael Irving. They were 1-15 that year. Their one win against the Washington Redskins that year. So that was painful for a lot of fans. But anyway, 14-2, 1991 regular season. But you play in the Super Bowl, which we're doing, you're ready to play Sunday. Well, obviously we're in 2022. Well, that's been the case for every Super Bowl. You play it after January 1st, so it falls into the next calendar year. The problem is no one knows that the 1992 Washington Redskins were a great football team because guess what? They weren't. They were 9-7 the following year. So that's where there was some confusion, and I think some fans brought that to light, which is, I think, it was a great point. You do want to get that fixed. You do want to make sure that you pay homage to the right team, not the year. At least that's my opinion. So you go on that crest, you have 88. Well, as the 87 team that technically had to run to get to the Super Bowl. They just played the game in San Diego, Jack Murphy Stadium then, where they beat the Denver Broncos 42-10. Remember, they scored 35 points in the second quarter of that game. All those things. We can go on and on and on. What do you think about the crest? Let me know your thoughts. And then, of course, there's the W. I've been saying this for a long time. Look at that. That's a sharp-looking W. I've been saying for the longest time that 2 years ago when they, let the world know that they're not going to use the name Redskins anymore, they're going to get away from that. We all know the story behind that. It was offensive to, some Native Americans and others as well. And people wanted that name change. Well, it took a long time for it to be changed. When the team announced that they were going to do that, people were wondering what was going to be the logo, what was going to be if there's a mascot, what's going to be the whole thing. Well, the first thing they did was they branded a W, a yellow W. This one is a little bit more upgraded, but it's still the W, which signifies Washington. And I think that was a brilliant move. And I knew that they were going to stick with the W because literally 2 years ago, when COVID really struck, especially our area really hard, you think about it, they actually had W's, carved out and put on the side of every seat in the stadium. You don't do stuff like that if you don't plan on sticking with it. And I said that for a long time. It would be foolish of this team, which has done some foolish things over the years. Trust me when I tell you that. It would have been extra foolish for them to rebrand and do all those things in order to just take it down with another name or another logo or another emblem. And they didn't do that. So I think that was smart on their behalf. They got something right in that department. Overall, though, as far as the launch and the rebrand, I still feel like there's some elements of it that was rushed that just doesn't vibe yet. And I'm not being negative. I think you have to be positive with this. It is a new name. You have to give them a chance. Winning cures all ills. If the team were to win, it doesn't matter what the name is. I tell people all the time, if they had named this team the Washington Cupcakes, literally, if they started next year 6-7-0, 8-0, 9-0, guess what you see all around Washington? Cupcakes everywhere, literally, jerseys, hoodies, pants, you name it, it'd be cupcakes everywhere. So the bottom line is if you win games, it doesn't matter what your name is. If you win games, you're going to win your fan base back, and that's what they're trying to do. Is it a good start? It's not for me to say, but I will say it's a fresh start. And at the end of the day, you have something that's different and something that's needed. Coming up, shortly on our show, I'm going to have a good friend of mine, somebody that really needs no introduction. Obviously, if you follow us at sportsjourney.com and you follow me and what I do, that Bob Matthews has been part of my staff for a long time, and he does a great job covering, the Washington Commanders as well. Sits right next to me in the press box every Sunday. And he also does a great job covering the Washington Capitals. So if you're a Caps fan, rock the red. If you're a Caps fan, you have to check him out as well on that. He does a really good job. And you can go to sportsjourney.com and get all the latest Capitals news and information as well from Bob. So we'll have him on shortly. We're going to take a break. When we come back, not just Bob, but we're also going to talk about what does this team need to do to get better as far as the product on the field. Naturally, we talked about the branding and the uniforms and all that good stuff, but it doesn't mean diddly if you can't win games on the field. So what does this team need to do this offseason to be able to compete at a high level and compete for a Super Bowl, which I think every fan of this fan base really wants to see. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more right here, After Practice Podcast. Well, welcome back, everybody, to After Practice Podcast, powered by sportsjourney.com. Make sure you check out sportsjourney.com as always. And then, of course, ABC Channel 4 TV studios, where we're going to be doing this podcast all the time from now on. So, hey, just a new look for you, similar radio kind of, from my ESPN days, now TV, because, I am an anchor here at ABC Channel 4. So that's a big thing. So, yeah, we're just breaking all this stuff down for the Washington football team. And the team has a lot of things that they have to do to get better on the field. I mean, forget the uniforms and how flashy they can be, because you can run out the tunnel with all the smoke and the crowd's going crazy. You can have these nice, glamorous uniforms on, and as soon as the whistle blows, you're getting up off the ground. Your face is in the dirt. We don't want that. So we need to know, what can this team do to improve on the field? There's a lot of holes on this team. I mean, and I say holes because they do need upgrades. They need to get better. I personally feel like this team needs to get better at the wide receiver position. There's some talent at the position, and there's a budding superstar at the position in Terry McLaurin, but I think he needs another person opposite him to really take him to the next level as well. They signed Curtis Samuel in the offseason last year to give them, a nice 1-2 punch, definitely with speed, but Curtis Samuel was hurt pretty much all year long, played in 2 games or 3 games, suited up, but just didn't do anything. And for the money they're paying him, they needed to have their dividends met. They needed to see the instant results. They didn't do that, so hopefully they can get that this year from him. But on the flip side of that, I do think that there's so many talented receivers in this draft coming up that they could draft themselves and get a home run caliber player at the receiver spot to go along with not just, Curtis Samuel, but you have De'Ami Brown, who they drafted from North Carolina this past season. Rookie showed potential, and he definitely has some big play capability, but he has to get better. Dak Milne, who they got from BYU, is another young player that they like a lot, showed some potential, but they definitely need to have more. Cam Sims as well, will he be back this year? I think he will be, but they need someone to help Terry McLaurin. I think that they need some offensive line help too. They drafted Sam Cosmi out of Texas to play tackle. I personally think he's a guy that may be even moving inside. If Brandon Scherf does not come back, and I don't think Brandon Scherf's going to be in Washington's uniform this year. That's just me. If he doesn't, I think Sam Cosmi might be the guy that you might want to consider moving in the inside to replace Brandon Scherf at right guard. So there's looks there. Then on the other side of the ball, on defense, clearly the biggest hole on that defense is at middle linebacker. They need a thumper. They need a guy that can run sideline to sideline and make plays up in the gaps, stop the run, and just be a force out there. I think that when they drafted Jamin Davis, obviously he was their first round draft pick this past offseason. I think they envisioned him being that middle linebacker, and maybe he still could be, but I think his game is more tailored and more suited to be on the outside with the speed that he possesses and the athleticism that he has. I just think he would be a better fit on the outside, where he could wreak havoc on the edges. You could put him behind a Chase Young. You could put him behind a Montez Sweat on either side and just bring an element of speed and again, athleticism that most teams don't possess. If you can fill the middle of your field, you're going to fill a huge void on your team. Maybe they can get some help at corner. Maybe they can get a look at safety as well. Although I thought Bobby McCain kind of positioned himself to be at that free safety position, especially after the final game he had against the New York Giants in New York in Week 17, the regular season finale, where he had 2 interceptions and springboarded the team to a victory. I think he got better as the season progressed. And I did mention corner, but I think if you can get William Jackson to play up to his potential, remember he was the #1 prize free agent signing, and was considered to be the best free agent corner available during free agency last year. Washington got him, paid him a lot of money to come here, and he didn't really have that impactful season that he's capable of having. Hopefully in year 2 in the same system and you're more familiar with your surroundings, you can play up to your capabilities, which I think he should. So those are the moves that can be made, but you notice I left out one move in particular, and it's the most obvious move for this football team. And it comes at what position? The quarterback position. And there's a player that I think is out there that they have to get. And who is that player? Drum roll, please. Boom. Russell Wilson. That's right. I'm going to say it. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. Everyone is talking about it. People think that it may not happen. Why not? Why couldn't it happen for them? Think about it. This is a guy that's won a Super Bowl, probably should have 2 Super Bowls. Shame, 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 shame on you, Pete Carroll, because they should have 2 Super Bowls. If Pete Carroll didn't get, I don't know, in his feelings or whatever, and not run the football with Marshawn Lynch, Seattle was on their way to having 2 back-to-back Super Bowls, and inexplicably, they threw the ball on that 4th and 1. It just didn't make any sense. It was 3rd and 1. From the goal line, they threw the football when your running back was battering New England. Whole nother story. But anyway, yeah, Russell Wilson's a guy that has that pedigree. He won in college. He won at NC State before he transferred to Wisconsin. He won at Wisconsin. He's a winner. He goes to Seattle. He totally changes the fortunes of that franchise, and they've been a perennial playoff team pretty much since he's been there, and he's played at an MVP clip. If it wasn't for a guy named Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson may have an MVP or 2 under his belt. So if you think about what Washington could inherit if they were to somehow pull off this heist, and that's exactly what it would be. It would have to be a heist in order to get him. Well, guess what? Washington's one of the teams right now that has the most cap room, as far as the salary cap. I think they're up to the tune of $60 million that they can spend on free agents. And if I'm, the brass of the Washington Commanders, I'm saying to myself, I've got to get this guy at all costs. And I'm going to give you another little secret on how they could probably make their money back, folks. Think about it this way. You spend money, you want to somehow get it back, right? Well, think about it. You just changed your uniform. You just changed your brand. You just changed kind of the logo, okay? And now you go out and you get yourself a potential Hall of Fame talent at quarterback. A guy that's been in multiple, Super Bowls. He's been in 2 Super Bowls, but also, more importantly, multiple, All-Star games, Pro Bowls. This is a guy that gets it done. And he hasn't had the most talent in Seattle. Let's call it like it is. It's not like he's been throwing the ball to all-pro receivers every year. That hasn't been the case. Lockett's pretty good. Obviously, we know about DK Metcalf. He's a Pro Bowler for sure. But he's just been in the league now. He just finished his 2nd year. So if you think about Russell Wilson over his career in Seattle, it's been defense or bust for that team. The Legion of Boom, that defense carried that organization, and Russell Wilson improving and doing things, off cuff as a quarterback, they won games. Well, if he comes to Washington, there's some talent in the building already. And like I said, Terry McLaurin, you have Logan Thomas, who's a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, in my opinion. Antonio Gibson, running back, slash receiver running back, can do some things. J.D. McKissick, who has to be a top priority for this team, too, to sign as far as free agent, re-signing him to keep him on the team. So there's some talent in the building for Russell Wilson. And then naturally, the defense that looms, that could be what everyone thinks they could be. And we've been saying that for years now. But I would think this year would be the year that everything should fall into place. There's some talent here for him, So there's another thing, and like I mentioned to you, I'm going to tell you a secret. It's not really a secret. It's just my own thought process here. But how can Washington pay a lot of money and get that money back? New rebrand, new everything, and you usher it in with a face around the league that's widely known and respected in a Russell Wilson. That's a good look for you. His jersey will sell like hotcakes if he came to Washington. Trust me when I tell you that would be one of the top selling jerseys around the league. More importantly, he's from Richmond. He's not far from, D.C. Washington has their training camp, their headquarter facility for training camp is in Richmond at the Bon Secours Training Center in downtown Richmond. So if you think about that, think of the fans, think of the fan base. For, the last 3, 4, 5 summers with me being down there for training camp, and it's hot. I will tell you, Richmond, it is sweltering. I sit there and, I turn around sometimes and I'm like, hey, it's not a lot of fans out here. They haven't had a reason to come out. They haven't been excited. The last time that place was rocking and rolling, and I mean like where it was a zoo, it literally was a circus, was going back to 2012 when RG3 was a rookie. And they had that training camp there. I've never seen Richmond like that over the course of 14 days. I've never seen it like that. It was unbelievable. If you get Russell Wilson That's his hometown. That's his area. You may duplicate that, if not supersede that. You may surpass that. And I think if you're Washington, you have to think about that because you're going to get some money back on your investment. Naturally, you want your investment to be on the field. And what does Russell Wilson do for this team on the field? He does a lot. He brings instant credibility. He brings instant leadership. And more importantly, he's won games. You know, guys in the locker room, this is a young football team, but guys in that locker room can look at him and see, you know, lead by example. He's done it. He's been to the Super Bowl. You know, he's been an MVP in the Super Bowl. He's done some things that, you know, these guys remember. You know, he's probably going to be looked up to, you know, kind of like, you know, like, wow, my idol. I'm in the locker room with him. Those are things that go a long way. And I go back to when Alex Smith was traded to Washington a couple years ago from Kansas City. And a good friend of mine, you know, rest his soul, Therese Paylor, a good friend of mine who passed away last year. I remember Therese called me and told me that this team is getting the leader of men. He's getting a leader. They're getting a leader of men. And he was never more right and accurate than that because Alex Smith galvanized that locker room. I remember young guys in the locker room, Chris Thompsons of the world, these guys telling me, this guy's the guy, man. Like, everybody loves him. He's one of them. He was in there playing ping pong when they did have the infamous ping pong tables. I mean, he was part of the guys. Well, I don't think they've had that since. And they need that. And you have to have it at the most important position in all of sports, which is quarterback. So that's a good look for them if they can pull this off. I think it would do wonders for the area, for the fan base. It would bring some fans who are right there on the edge as far as, you know, jumping ship. I think it would pull them back in and give this team hope. It will breathe life back into the franchise with a new brand. I think it makes perfect sense. So, look, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to have none other than Bob Matthews. And we'll talk about Russell Wilson. Bob is a Richmond guy, you know, Norfolk, Virginia as well. So he knows that landscape pretty well. So we'll talk with him. I had to get him to pull over off the road to come on for this segment. So we'll talk about that with Bob when we come back here on the After Practice Podcast. Hang tight. Welcome back, everyone. Now I have a gentleman that really needs no introduction joining us on the After Practice Podcast. My good friend, God has been with me at Sports Journey now for a couple of years now, doing a great job, covers the football team, sits next to me in the press box, and also does a great job covering the Washington Capitals, Mr. Bob Matthews. What's going on, my friend?
El Presidente, so good to see you in person or via Zoom. It's been too long. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just been super, super busy down here in West Virginia and just getting back to normal, so to speak. So, you know, big changes, not just for us, but for the team that we've been covering for several years and new name, new brand. What's your take on it?
Oh, yeah. You think there have been a few changes? Yeah, maybe just a couple. You know, I was sitting and I was at first glance when I'm watching the reveal on today's show, my first thought was, that's it. That's what we get. 19 months, and that's what we got.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought it really was the most Washington football thing, or the most Washington Commanders thing ever in that rollout. The fact that it was awkward, that it seemed kind of thrown together at the last minute. I guess kind of par for the course, really.
Listen, I've been saying the same thing, and anybody that knows, we try to be fair. We try not to pile on or any of that stuff. But the bottom line was, I thought the same thing. You've had all this time, and listen, we've talked about it. We've seen artist renditions of uniforms that look pretty good. That's the best that you could come up with in this time. I mean, it just looks like maybe the focus is just going to be on the name. So right now, branding of the name, and then maybe the uniforms are going to get tweaked over time. I naturally would think that's got to happen.
I have a theory about the name, and that's that I think that if you were able to get into whatever they call it now, Commander's Park, Commander's Palace, team headquarters, whatever you want to call it, I think somewhere in the team headquarters, there is probably a report from a consultant, and either the top line or the conclusion of that report is that a plurality of focus group participants found the name Commanders satisfactory. I mean, it's just, the name itself is just kind of, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's fine. It's not going to offend anybody. And I guess it's almost like a blank canvas. And if somehow the organization turns into a winning organization, well, I guess at some point everybody will come to accept the name Commanders,
Right. Well, I mean, if they win games, like we said before, that's the big thing. If you win games, the uniforms, the name, whatever it is, just seems better. And that's going to be something that they have to do. Now, I do want to do this, have Bob Matthews on. He's with Sports Journey, does a great job with us. You can check out his own show, too. He has his own podcast, Bob Matthews Show. So listen, the talk right now for this team to get better is naturally on the field, and it's at the quarterback position. Russell Wilson, is a name that keeps popping up. He's a Richmond kid, from not too far, from even Norfolk area where you are, not too far, away. What would he do for this organization if they could somehow pull this heist off?
It's a fascinating question because, and we've had this discussion before, this philosophical discussion of, does the quarterback make the team or does the team make the quarterback? I mean, we really don't know overall what kind of talent level this team has, I don't think, because we don't have, the team hasn't had a quarterback to get the ball to all of the playmakers that these coaches think they have. So in theory, Russell Wilson would turn this, would at least let us know if this team has the type of roster, excluding quarterback, on down, to become a contender. That's what I think would happen if Russell Wilson showed up at Ashburn sometime in the offseason. But then you have to ask yourself, is that going to happen? And that's where I think the fascinating part of this offseason is going to be. I mean, you've got your pick of a bunch of different teams if you want to leave Seattle, if you're Russell Wilson or any of these other free agents. Do you really want to come to Washington? I mean, you could go to Tampa. You could go to Pittsburgh. You could go to places that are a lot closer to making a deep playoff run or a Super Bowl appearance than Washington. I'm not sure this organization has the faith and the credit anymore that somebody like Russell Wilson would take them on spec and say, yeah, I think there is that talent there.
Well, the one thing that they will have is they have the money. They have the salary cap space. And you could rack a Brinks truck up for this guy, and maybe entice him and his wife, because he has star power. She's a star. That's the kind of stuff you want in a new rebrand. And I was just saying this, if he's from Richmond and your training camp's in Richmond, imagine the circus. We thought it was a circus when RG3 was there back in, 2012. it would be an absolute circus if Russell Wilson was in Richmond for training camp. This team could make money, they could market, they could usher in a new era for their football. I think it would be a coup for them, and I think that that's where they need to put all their money towards to bring this guy here.
Oh, no, absolutely. And to me, the big question is, all right, Ron Rivera's already said we're gonna make a big push for a big name at quarterback. But again, money only takes you so far. Russell Wilson's a guy who he had been to 2 Super Bowls in his first 3 years. And when you think about it, he was really one bad Pete Carroll offensive call away from being a back-to-back Super Bowl winner. So you got to think at this point, he's 33, 34. He's starting to think legacy. And from that point of view, does he want to take it on faith that he can turn it around in Washington, given what's happened, the last 20 years? So, if the money's even comparable, or even if it's more, how much more money does he need? I'm not sure Washington can outbid, again, a Green Bay if Aaron Rodgers leaves, or a Pittsburgh, or any of those other teams, even if there is an opening.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one wrench in there before I let you go. And that wrench is, if you go to Green Bay, you have to replace a legend in Aaron Rodgers, who won a Super Bowl. If you go to Tampa, you have to replace the GOAT, who just recently retired, in Tom Brady, who's won multiple Super Bowls and just won one in Tampa a year ago. If you go to Pittsburgh, you have to replace Ben Roethlisberger, a Hall of Famer who won a Super Bowl. So you're going to places where the expectations are going to be super high for you to excel instantly. However, if you come to Washington, you kind of get a little wiggle room, but at the end of the day, it can't get any worse here. So perhaps you get a guy that can come in and elevate them now and take them over the threshold. So, there's 2 ways to look at it, and you're getting paid too, by the way. So if it doesn't work out, hey, you got your check, and no one's ever going to do it, 35, 40 years. So that could be a seller to him. And then maybe they tell him, look, we're not that far away. You saw that we won the division, even though it was downtrodden 2 years ago. Last year, they still won the same amount of games besieged by COVID and injuries. So maybe you're the last link that takes this thing over the top.
Yeah, Russ would have to look at the NFC East and say, oh, well, hell, we can easily go 4-2, if nothing else. And the other selling point, I think, that the club should make is, hey, Russ, this is Washington, D.C. I know what's been going on here the last 20 years or so, but the old axiom from back in the day still applies. The 2 most powerful people in the nation's capital at any one time are the president of the United States and the quarterback of the Washington, I guess now, Commanders, and not necessarily in that order. Right. So, maybe the ego part of it, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but maybe the ego part of it comes into it too.
All right. Well, look, folks, Bob Matthews, I'm not going to keep you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on short notice and ushering the podcast back, the new TV look. So appreciate you for coming on, my friend. And, you're going to be on here quite a bit.
Lake, anytime. I promise next time it will be in studio, not out on the road. So I appreciate it. And everybody, go to sportsjourney.com, download the podcast. We'd appreciate all of the listens.
All right, my friend. I appreciate it. Get back on the road. Be safe. We'll be in touch. What can you say, man? Bob Matthews, he's the ultimate professional. That's what we do. That's my guy right there. Has been doing this with me for a while and doing a great job. Remember, you can go to sportsjourney.com, see his Capitals coverage, and then naturally see his Washington coverage as we get back closer to the season. One of the things that I did want to do, I wanted to read some of the questions that were asked of me on social media, on Twitter. I had tweeted out, if you have anything you want me to talk about on my pod, shoot me over a tweet. So let's get into it, because I did have a couple come through. I have Wait, what's up, Wait? Appreciate the love. Wait says, okay, let me make sure I get this up right here, folks. Okay. So Wait says, hey, Lake, Wait here. What is your take on the rookie class of quarterbacks? Also, what scenario what scenario gets a Russell Wilson to DC if you have to line it up? Okay. And you can see these things on Twitter. This isn't made up stuff like some other folks do. This is real. First and foremost, I do appreciate that time, Wait, for you to do that. As far as the rookie quarterbacks, Well, we just had, Serge Lewis, no relation, but he is my videographer, my little brother too, He actually went to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. He was just down there and put out some great pictures. You can see those as well. Serge the Shooter, go to his social media. And then, of course, on Sports Journey, he's going to have an article coming up this weekend that details in depth, what he saw from these quarterbacks, Kid Willis from Liberty, Carroll from Ole Miss, and then, of course, Pickett from Pitt, So there's a lot of things that he saw that, he broke down that we're going to talk about. As far as my take, I think if Washington's going to draft a quarterback, they clearly have to take one of those three, and it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for mobility, then Willis is the guy. If you're looking for, kind of like the hot name at this moment, then you can take the kid from Pitt. And if you're looking for just consistency over the year, I think you're going to look at Carroll from Ole Miss. All three of these guys can play. I think they're getting a bad rap too. I think because that they're this year isn't the best year for quarterbacks coming out in the draft. Those three guys are being held hostage, so to speak. They're being looked at as maybe they're not worthy to be first rounders. And I think in any year, they probably could have been late first rounders. They still were first round talents, definitely second round talents. And, if you're a team that needs a quarterback, first and second round are what you're looking at to bring in a quarterback. So if you're Washington and you can't get a Russell Wilson, you can't get an Aaron Rodgers, or you can't, trade and get another, top flight free agent quarterback. And I think that those are the only two that they should even be entertaining. Then I think you draft one of those other three young guys. So good question on that weight. And then as far as Russell Wilson, when you said, what do I think as far as him coming, is it lined up? I think they do need to do everything they can to get all their ducks in a row and put all their eggs in that basket. I know my parents used to always tell me, don't put all your eggs in one basket because it'll never work out. That's not always been true, but yeah, for the most part, maybe. I will say this. If I'm Washington, I'm putting all those eggs in that basket, and I may even go to the local store and get more eggs and put them in that basket because you need to get this guy to be your quarterback in the worst way. You have to make this work if it can possibly go down, okay? Who else do we have? Andy Burrows. What's up, Andy? Andy says, with the news from the mayor about the new stadium and the talk of RFK, do you think there's a chance the team could eventually end up back in D.C.? Great question, Andy. Appreciate that. Listen, the mayor, Muriel Bowser, has always said that Washington wasn't coming back into the city with that name, with the name of the Redskins. They were very much on the climate that we're in right now, politically correct, all the stuff right now. They were part of that. And she said they're not coming back to D.C. with that name. They won't even entertain funding a stadium, taxpayer money, none of that. Well, they changed the name, changed the brand, changed the logo. And now there's a chance that they can go back to the city, and she's actually spearheading that. So, yeah, I think that would be a great look because let's face it, this team is, their headquarters is in Virginia and Ashburn, which is my hometown now outside of D.C., and then they play in Maryland at Landover at FedEx Field. So they're doing things in two different states and not doing anything with which their name is part of. So I think that that's something that they definitely need to fix and get going again here. They've got to get that team back in D.C. All the other pro teams are there, the Capitals, the Nationals, the Wizards, D.C. United, all the pro teams are there. So that's something that I think that they're going to definitely have to get done. So with that said, one more, and then we got to get out of here because I'm running over time. Ty, appreciate you, Ty. Ty says people always say this guy, that guy won't come here. Do you still think it's the case? And I don't. We just talked about earlier, William Jackson came over. He was a high-priced free agent, had a lot of suitors. He came to Washington. He got the money and he got the opportunity. And for years, free agents used to come to Washington. Dan Snyder would fly him in on the helicopter or the jet and spend all this money. The problem was a lot of those guys were at the end of their careers and they just wanted one more big payday. And they were playing with ski masks on under their helmets because they were stealing money. They weren't doing anything on the field. They were just taking money. It was Sunday, bank. Sunday, checking account, Sunday direct deposit. That's all they were doing. Well, now you have a young team with talent. You have new imagery, new logo. Sometimes young people, you know, they go towards those things. They like that. They like a new look. They like you know, being part of something that's fresh from the very beginning. So they do have opportunities. And if you get Russell Wilson, or if you can get a really big name free agent to come here like that, others will follow. So I could see that being the case. So look, we've got to wrap up today's show. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate Bob Matthews for coming on. Appreciate, you know, folks who just tweeted me. Appreciate you for watching. Appreciate you for listening. If you're subscribing, remember, we're out there on every platform, so please check it out. Let me know how you think about the new look / TV, radio. Also got to give a shout out to my director here, my technical director, Tiny Elliott. He's not tiny, but that's the name. Kind of cheesy, but that's the name. But anyway, I got to tell you, this guy's making me look good, even in my full gig, you know, as far as anchoring here, morning show here on ABC. That's my guy right there making everything happen for me. So we're trying to bring you a different look. Appreciate everybody for joining us, and we'll be back. As always, you know my saying, spend time with family and friends, leave everybody else alone. Have a great weekend. That's right. Enjoy your weekend. And we'll be back on Monday right here on the After Practice Podcast. Take care.